My name is Minister Dr. Cynthia Marie Whitley, and I'm not your conventional minister. The name of this podcast is Be Aware. Be aware of your thoughts. Each week, we will review self-realization through storytelling. We will reflect on the theme as we become conscious and accept responsibility of how we create our life based on what we are conscious or aware of. Shalom. Story number 3. When will I become wealthy? This night, I'm driving adjacent to the boardwalk. My destination is finding a section of the boardwalk to sit along the beach in Far Rockaway, Queens, because I want to talk with God. I need some answers. I have a long list of accomplishments in my life. Some people would die for. A bachelor's, 2 master's degrees, 1 doctorate, status of minister, and retired public school teacher. I've written 6 books and I've raised 8 children successfully. 4 girls to women and 4 African-American boys to men in America who are still living and finding their way in life, all of them. Yet I still ask, why haven't all my prayers been answered this night on the beach? At the same time, I do affirm loudly and clearly that all of my prayers are answered. Many of them are on the list above, and some I have not mentioned. I prayed endlessly for the successful completion of all of the above accomplishments, and much, much more. So more specifically, this evening's walk is in regard to why my financial status has not reached the status of wealthy or rich. Knowing I must be careful of what I say, because in comparison to being raised poor and in the slums, I am wealthy today. So let me be more transparent, even more. What I am praying for is the ability to do anything I desire, travel anywhere my heart's desire, and take care of anyone I desire, in particularly my children and their children, at ease. That status I have not obtained, or am not aware of, and I ask this night again, God, why not? There's so much literature, webinars, and speakers who proclaim how to obtain riches, and I've read and been a part of many of the seminars. So what am I missing, God? As I continue my conversation with God, I ask, do I have it all wrong? Maybe I'm looking for the wrong things. The peace and status I have today is the dream, the answered dream of my childhood and the answered dream of my ancestors. As I stand on the beach and look at the expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, stretching out for miles and miles with the water appearing as though it enjoys its portion, the waves almost rhythmic. It is rhythmic and is clashing against the shore. What a sight to behold this evening. I'm even taking pictures while I'm there. I realize that right at this moment I am witnessing what many travel to see in other places, and all expenses have already been paid by God for me. As I meditate with my eyes open, I remembered that the beach is only 2 blocks from my wealthy section of town. something I never imagined. This is wealth. I thought about being 67 and alive and feeling well. That is wealth. I thought about the abundant possessions at home and the blessing that I have in my family, where my children call me blessed. And that is wealth indeed. Although widowed, I will be mindful and I will say that I am wealthy. The biblical story of the widow who came to the prophet Elisha because her deceased husband died owing a debt comes to my mind. The story in 2 Kings 4 goes like this. The widow petitions the prophet Elisha and says, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord. And the creditor is coming to take my 2 sons to be his slaves." She was worried, but she was also doing something about it. She was working on how to save her sons. Elijah said to her, "Tell me, what do you have in your house?" Now, she only had 1 jar of oil. Some people would have said, "I don't have anything," or "I only have 1 jar of oil," and complain the rest of the way. Remember my accomplishments above? But she says, "I have a jar of oil." Elijah says, "Go borrow empty vessels from everywhere, from all of your neighbors. Do not gather just a few." In other words, get as many as you can. "And when you have come in, you shall shut the door behind you and your sons. Then using your 1 jar of oil, pour into all those vessels and set aside the full ones." When all the vessels were full, she came and told the man of God. And he said, "Go sell the oil and pay your debt." You hear that? Pay your debt. Pay your debt. "And you and your sons live on the rest." I need you all to remember this, my listeners. Remember podcast 2? What ingredients are in your bowl? This woman of God had faith, hope. She was grateful, and she trusted in God in spite of her seemingly lack. She could have just given up and released her sons, but she pressed on to search for an alternative solution. And because of her continence, her mindset, the ingredients in her cup runneth over. So I got my answer tonight. And I like to caution you, my listeners, the following. As we continue our work, and that is whatever desires are put on our hearts, and achieve our accomplishments, we are to press on and be ever grateful because we are far wealthier than we may realize. So it will behoove us to remain faithful, watching our thoughts and words, and with great expectancy, KNOW, that all our desires will be met in proportion to our awareness. Until next time. If you can't wait until next week's story, visit Looking for Self series on Amazon.com under Gershona Cynthia Whitley.